was quite the fast learner. I wasn't quite as fast, so I felt intimidated. But we put together a cha-cha routine with the help of my parents, who were both ballroom dancers, and we worked with them in their school, and they threw this thing together real quick, and we went out and performed for the Friday night party they had, and that was the beginning. I remember looking at my feet the whole time.
How
It's
old,
really
how
kind
old
of
were
funny.
you?
I was about 4.
And you remember that?
Yeah.
Now, was that something you enjoyed doing, or just your folks forced you into it?
Well, I really loved it. I had to go to the ballroom with them every day and spend all day watching adults play on the dance floor with one another, and I had to sit quietly, and I thought that was unfair. So after a while, I started taking an interest in dancing too. I think that was their plan,
And so,
get me interested.
and so this person, what was her name again?
Deborah Wolf.
Now, we can mention that in front of Kimberly?
I hope so.
I see him dance with women all the time. So,
But have you met this Deborah Wolf?
no. He was 4, so it's been a while.
Okay, but there is a person named Deborah Wolf, though. She was a real person.
Well, unfortunately, she's passed, but yes,
Oh, really?
she was
Oh.
real.
So you started at the age of 4, and then you just kept continuing at it.
For the rest of my life, except for a 2-year span in which I moved up to Sonoma from the San Francisco area and spent a lot of time there getting a place ready. We were building out an old restaurant and turned it into a disco, and we ran the disco there for a couple of years after we built it out. So it was about a 2-year break there.
That you weren't dancing professionally.
Right.
You're just running a disco.
Yeah.
Same question too, Kimberly. That were you born into dance?
Not born into dance like Ted's parents, but I jumped around our living room with music, loved to move, did ballet and modern and jazz, and did a lot of gymnastics. But this ballroom thing was new to me, and true story, I actually got into it about 18 years ago because I was interested in a guy. I was single at the time, and
It wasn't me.
yeah, he was really into ballroom dancing, and I couldn't understand why. I'd never heard of ballroom dancing. This was before Dancing with the Stars and all the big dance shows. And so I didn't want him to think I was stalking him, so I went to a neighboring city and took ballroom dance lessons there so I could learn the ballroom dances just long enough to be dangerous on the dance floor. And that's where I met Ted at a social dance party, and we had an instant connection, and we were engaged 6 months later and married a year later, and that was 17 years ago. So
And you've been dancing ever since?
ever since, we met on the dance floor, and so I became a convert to ballroom dancing.
Now your background had been a little bit different than Ted's
Yes.
in that you hadn't been a dancer per se. You were in banking, I think. At
I
one
was
time?
a commercial banker, and over 20 years in the San Francisco Bay Area, and was at the top of my game when Ted asked me to leave banking and move to Asheville, and that's been 12 years ago, just to set up dancing here in California, and left everything and moved to Asheville.
Okay, and that must have been a big shift or something to all of a sudden to move to Asheville and decide you want to do this on a full-time basis.
It was a huge shift. Everyone asked, "Are you going to go into banking?" And I said, "Not if I can help it." Keep dancing. And so it's just been a joy to work with couples, and I've seen so much and made so many connections with people, and it's been really fun.
I liked something you said to me. We were outside the station. We were talking about there are, I guess, people like pet owners, almost like people are pet owners and people who aren't pet owners. Is that a dichotomy with dancers too? There are either people who are dancers or not dancers.
Yeah, I think people have this misconception that it's going to be really difficult to get out there to partner dance. People are really happy to freeform a lot, but a lot of times just getting out there and moving with a partner seems a bit daunting. And we're here to dispel that myth that we can teach connection principles so it can be really easy for people to master dancing with their partner.
And talk a little bit about that concept, because I kind of wonder about that too, that I can dance too, or
Yes.
anybody can dance?
Anybody can dance. With connection principles, it's not just learning steps. There's a connection that applies on the dance floor as well as off the dance floor. And I like to say, let love lead and follow love's lead, because when you lead from your heart, in dancing and you learn these connection principles, there's nothing you can't do.
However, problem, Kimberly, that's great if people are in love with each other. But what if there are people who aren't? You said dance for. I love the concept. It's great for couples. What if people who just dances professionally, or just as friends, or is that a little bit different?
No, the connection principles are the same regardless. If you're in love with somebody, yes, it's easier to leave with your heart. But if you don't know somebody in ballroom dancing, we're dancing with people we've never met before. And when you connect with them and you're present, you lean in and you feel the lead before, instead of trying to usurp the lead, you really just lean in, make presence, make contact, and a heart connection is the same whether you're in love or you're not in love, that you lead from the heart and you can't go wrong.
Talk about that name, Ted, too, which I just love. The very first time I ever heard it, you started using it, Dance for Connection. What was the idea behind that name?
Well, it's a thing that I've been very passionate about for years and years. And a lot of times you go to a class or a school and they're teaching you a lot of steps and you have to really learn the steps quickly. It's interesting how a lot of people miss out on some of the things that are said in the classes about how to connect to your partner so that you can make it an easier task for yourself and your partner. And I like to spend more time on that. I like to think about that part as being the most important part. And so I don't let people miss it when we're in a class. I make sure they understand this is the most important thing, to keep focusing on that. And if you take your focus away from it, you'll start to have some issues. So the connection is really like what Kimberly's been saying, a leaning in of sorts. We're not leaning in to the point where it becomes a struggle and you're fighting your partner, but just enough to create enough of an awareness of a presence with your partner that you can feel where they are and what they're doing.
Well, you said something interesting. You're talking about, teaching people, especially beginners.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminds me of the one time I may have told Kimberly that I saw a show called Swing. It's about swing dance. And they call people up at front to learn some swing steps. And I said, I can do that.
Yeah.
They teach me one step, and I can do one step at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Then, Ted, I kid you not, within 15 minutes, they showed 15 other steps. and then, the classic, they showed me how I'm supposed to lift Cynthia over my head.
Oh, my gosh.
And I said, whoa, give me one step. And that's, I guess, a problem with some, instructors, that they go, people think they want to dance immediately and do all these steps, and it takes time.
It does. It does. You were thrown into a situation in which you had to go to college right away without going through the grade schools.
Right.
Well, you might have gone through the grade schools, but they put you there in light speed, so that was pretty tricky and not something that we like to do. We like to make sure and keep people very grounded in their basics, make sure they understand what they're doing and do them well before they move on to something else.
How long does it take to go through the process to become an acceptable dancer or ballroom
I
dancer?
think you can become an acceptable dancer in a given dance. If you chose swing, for example, you become an acceptable dancer within 2 or 3 lessons, I think. For most people. Now, for some people, it might take a little longer. Some people bring a lot of skills to the table already for whatever reason in their background, and others don't have those, so you have to build those in. And for the ones who are going to bring those skills quickly, already there, they should be able to have a few steps, maybe 2 or 3 steps down by the end of the first lesson, whereas somebody who's not brought those skills with them, they might take 2 or 3 lessons before they get those couple of steps down that they can feel good about doing. And you really only need 2 or 3 steps to feel good about dancing. After that, you can add if you wish, but those 2 or 3 should get you through it.
And maybe that was my problem. I should have just done one step.
And as a woman dancing with a gentleman, it's much more fun to dance when they know a step well rather than trying to do 50 different steps with them. I'd
Right,
much rather lead that.
Even one step would be not boring to someone. A lot of fellows feel like they're going to bore their partner, so they need to learn a lot of steps. And I think, no.
I'll take it easy.
If you learn one step really, really well, and that's all you do, your partner's going to be very, very happy with you.
Well, it's like my specialty. The one dance I could dance was the mouse.
I
Soupy
do,
Sales.
yeah.
And
Soupy Sales.
I could do that. That was one thing in one movement and just kept doing
I
it.
don't remember how it goes, but I'm sure I'd recognize it if I saw it.
I'll send you the YouTube clip.
Okay,
Or,
okay.
or maybe I'll have a special class just for people dancing the mouse.
Yeah, it involved the hands, didn't it?
Exactly, yeah. And that's about it. But I'll do that. Talk a little bit about then if people take dancing lessons with you folks, just in general, or specifically go through the Dance for Connection process. What is that all about? How does that start?
Well, we're offering a workshop on April 27th for Dance for Connection. It's specifically for couples to create a deeper connection, literally dance through life with greater confidence, ease, and joy, both on and off the dance floor. Because these principles, dance is a great metaphor for life. We often say it's not a set it and forget it type process. You don't just set your ballroom flame and then that's it. You're going to be leaning in, you're going to be adjusting, you're going to be pivoting, and those types of moves on the dance floor will serve you well off the dance floor as well, because it's a conscious and consistent connection that brings that clarity on the dance floor as well as off the dance floor too.
It really does help people too to learn how to pay attention and be in the moment, be present with their partner, which is
Yeah.
good on the floor and off the floor for
And one of
skills.
the amazing things I think, and you certainly being an example of this, is that couples who dance oftentimes stay together. You know, it's
Yeah.
just like, I remember my parents danced all their lives, you know, and it was very sweet to watch them dance, that they never seemed to get tired of it. You know?
No, yeah. That's my grandparents met in the Depression era, and my grandfather was an amazing dancer, and I danced with him at a wedding, and I felt like I was gliding across the floor on ice skates or something. I said, "Grandpa, where did you learn to dance like that?" And he said, "In the Depression era, we had weekly dances, and that's where I met your grandmother." And they'd been dancing ever since, and it was so touching to see that.
Reminds me though the Ginger Rogers line though still, and I still give you, Kimberly, and any woman dancer, credit, because I don't know if it's true, Ted, but they do seem to have the harder job. You know,
I believe they do have a hard job. It's especially true later on when they become much better dancers. In the beginning, I think the leader has a harder job in a sense that the leaders are feeling a little intimidated about having to do that part, the leading part, and get it right and not step on the lady's toes. You know, no man wants to feel like a bull in the china shop.
and then again with the women wearing the high heels, oftentimes the women going backwards. You know,
And at that point, when it starts to become, when they both become proficient, then the acceleration into more advanced patterns, that's definitely going to be more challenging for the followers because of their having to step backwards a lot and having to really pay attention and follow and do that in the kind of shoes they're dancing in.
when you're teaching, for example, if you're teaching just a guy, or sometimes you'll have a guy just take lessons. And do you ever have to teach a guy a lesson?
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay. And how does that work? Do you have to take the female?
I have to take the follower's role, and unless they want to learn the follower's role. Some guys do want to learn both roles or one or the other. But yes, I'll take the follower's role, and usually what I'll do is I'll show them their part and have them do it a few times alongside me and then see themselves doing it in the mirror so they can get confident at that. And then I'll take a dance position and have them move me around and see if they're actually leading, because they can usually do the step, but then it's the leading, the connecting that we talked about that's going to be the important part. So
That's where we
watch checking
found,
in there.
yes, dancing as a couple. So if we have a single gentleman that wants to learn, he can dance with me, and then Ted can give him the instruction from a leader standpoint, and I can give him instruction from the woman's standpoint, following what he's leading, and so it works well.
I always prefer it when Kimberly's on the lesson. It takes the pressure off.
I can imagine. How has video transformed the whole industry in terms of when you give lessons? Do you take them also sometimes? Do you have them watch?
Well, we don't do a lot of videoing of people until they start to get to a place where they want to really perfect something and start to look better at it. And then we can take a quick video on a phone or something and show that back to them. Yeah, that works really well in that situation.
Yeah, then they can go home and practice what
Yeah.
they learned, and it refreshes the memory.
Because I guess that's important. Obviously, it's important in terms of perfecting what you're learning. That if you just come for a once-a-week lesson, it's not going to cut it. You know, you actually have to practice sometimes.
It is a practice.
Yeah, you want to keep it up. If you don't keep it up, you will lose it.
And do you find that with your students that some really get that and really practice, and you can see the difference? They come back a week later.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I usually tell people that if you want to get a maximum benefit out of your lesson, practice at least 5 times as long as you learn on your lesson. So if you take an hour-long lesson, practice a half hour every day or an hour every day during the week if you have time, and that will really enhance what you've done. In other words, it's kind of like an investment, and you will reap tremendous rewards from those practices.
And that's where it's helpful to have a former banker with you, is that she can drive that point home.
Exactly.
A lot of people like dancing in the kitchen. It's really great. When you're cooking, put on some music and just dance around. So it doesn't have to be a formal thing where you need a specific spot to do it, but just dance spontaneously in the
Just
kitchen.
doing your own part is really what you need to do. The connecting part is, of course, what gets you to be able to do it with another person.
Yeah.
But doing your own part, that's all you need. So you don't actually have to have your partner there to remember your own step.
And it's probably also very sweet for couples to actually hang out together and do something of fun nature.
Yeah.
And they probably enjoy that. And that's, again, do you stress that in the course too? Or?
Absolutely, Blaine. I mean, anytime you can be together with your partner, we call it a dancing date night, is that so often these days we're connected to our cell devices, and it's so important to get away from that. One of the couples in our recent workshop, we asked them what they hope to gain from the workshop when they come, and of course a deeper connection with their partner, fun-loving connection. But I'll never forget what he said, is that we want to become better dancers, but we also want to model for our children what it's like for their parents to dance together and have fun together and not always be trying to do the day-to-day things that we all get caught up in with the daily grind, but to see their parents actually having fun and spending some time together in a loving way.
As you're saying it, I'm thinking about your grandfather.
Yes.
The story you tell, I'm thinking about my parents.
Mm-hmm.
And what a sweet memory.
Yes.
That dancing and not arguing, not on the cell phone,
Mm-hmm.
not watching TV or something.
Yeah.
Actually in touch with each other.
Yes.
It really is one of the few
Yeah.
things you can do where you just can't have a cell phone. I mean, nowadays people even have cell phone with them when they're eating their dinner together.
Yeah.
But dancing, you can't do that.
That's
No.
interesting. I wouldn't say you prohibit it, but you tell them no cell phones on the dance floor. You say that?
I think it goes without saying.
Yeah,
They're
just-
not gonna bring them with them.
No.
They just don't.
Well, it's
Yeah.
interesting too. Movies I've seen and TV shows, I've never seen people on their cell phones when they're, dancing.
No,
So
yeah.
that's kind of a cool thing, though.
It is. It
Um,
requires 100% of your concentration, which is terrific.
Let me ask you guys this question. Dancing. I would imagine it's hard to argue when you're dancing, or do people argue when they dance?
I don't see many people arguing when they're dancing. There are some arguments from people that occur when they're learning. Oh, you're not doing that right, honey. Oh, he said do it this way, or she said do it that way. We usually just defer whatever comments they make back to us and say, if you have a question, please ask us.
Good point.
Because your partner won't know the answer. So, yeah, and that usually works really well.
And rather than get out of the criticism mode of the partner,
Mhm.
that's what you get paid, to do to
Yeah.
help them. They get
Exactly.
what-
It circumvents a lot of problems if you let them go on too long with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, then it gets some momentum building, and it's a little harder to stop them then. But
Well,
Yeah.
it's funny as you're saying that. I seem to recall some classic films, though, that were funny, that there were arguments on the dance floor. I forget, what's the Australian film where they're fighting on the dance floor or something, the couple.
that's right.
Oh.
Yeah, there's so many wonderful films, and that one was strictly ballroom.
Right.
Yeah.
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 What
Yeah.
great- Now, what's you thinking about people watching dance, both in movies and on TV, good or bad?
Both, really, mostly good. I think what you see is oftentimes a lot of hype about dancing to make it appealing for a movie or something like that. But at the same time, it's just very inspiring to see people up there doing things, even if they're doing something kind of goofy for that scene.
Well, the thing I wonder about sometimes when I watch Dancing with the Stars is you were talking before about some people kind of have an advantage almost, that, I don't know if it's unfair, but an athlete or somebody who had been trained almost like for dancing type things
Yeah.
seem to have a big advantage over, say, a football player.
People
Some of
who-
the football players are amazing. But like if you're a gymnastic performer,
Whoever is doing something that's got a lot of physical coordination with the whole body is going to be having a little advantage over somebody who who just does sports. Somebody who's doing sports will have tremendous coordination, timing, skills, rhythm, but to put it all together into the whole body takes a little bit extra time for them to kind of get that going.
And even if they are, you can enhance it too. I remember we worked with a couple and for their wedding that was upcoming, and they were working on a salsa number, and he was a cage fighter. And at the wedding reception, his coach came up to him and he said, "You should have been dancing many, many more years earlier because your footwork got so much better out in the ring." So you never know how one sport will carry over into another sport.
Exactly. A lot of times when you see pro football players, they have been put through a grueling series of dance lessons during their training, and it really does help them a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Developing the coordination, the timing, the rhythm, balance.
When they train, for example, for Dancing with Stars,
Mhm.
you might know about this or you've read about it. How much practice do they do to get ready for a show? Is that like
Well, they're in a very unusual situation because they're dancing 7 hours a day, very intense because they have a short period of time to perfect a routine before they go out there.
It's
But for-
almost like a job then, so you're
Yeah.
dancing it all day long, which is one of the things that makes it possible for professional dancers to really stay ahead of the game is that they're dancing and teaching all the time. And the student maybe come in once, twice, or 3 times a week if they're lucky, and they feel like that it takes them a lot longer to get as good as a lot of these new, quote, new professionals who come in and just started teaching not long ago, and look, all of a sudden in 2 or 3 months they're practically stars. And that's the reason. It's the amount of time that you can put into it, which is why I like to get people to practice a lot.
And talking about stars, it reminds me of one of my favorite pictures, of course, is of Kimberly. And she was she was a star making performance when you were in
Derek
the audience.
Huff?
Yeah, talk about that. That was great.
Oh my gosh! And we just saw his concert this past weekend in
Were
Charleston.
you on stage this time?
No, that was like the rare thing. He does not bring people up anymore, although he jumped over one lady's head. But this was a rare situation where he picked me out of an audience of 3,000 people to come up on stage, and that's where the connection principles came about, because we were dancing a salsa number together, just he and I on stage. And he took my hand, and I gave him that connection that we work with couples on, and he got this big smile on his face, and it was this realization that, oh my gosh, she's a dancer. And then he asked me, he said, "Are you up for some dips?" And I'm like, "Yeah, go for it, whatever you want to do." So it was one of those amazing moments that I will cherish.
But just see the picture was just so cool, and then you got called out. That was just at a random.
It was random. It was random, and it was great. And then 2 years later, we went to their concert, and Julianne Hough had Ted up on stage,
Oh,
too.
really?
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't get to dance with her, but that's usually how that goes. You have a professional gentleman on stage will bring a lady out from the audience and actually dance with her quite often. But on the other hand, it's usually the other way around, not going to work that way. So what usually happens is the female professional calls 1 or 2 or 3 volunteers from the audience, guys, and then she'll have them do something kind of similar to what she's doing. She'll show a body wave or a ripple or something like that, and she'll say, "Okay, now your turn." And the guys have to try and figure out how to move like her. And of course, the audience roars; they go crazy. Everybody's laughing, and it's terrific. And I was expecting that to happen, but this time it didn't work out that way. She brought 3 guys out on stage, and she pointed me first, or I think it was second, and she said, "Show us your best move." I was like, "Oh, I actually get to do something? I'm not going to actually make the audience laugh and make myself into a laughingstock. Okay, great." So I decided to do a little capoeira move that I learned from some samba dancers. And my feet wouldn't move for about 3 seconds, and I thought, oh no, this is the first time in my life my feet won't move. I was a little nervous for a second. So I kind of hurled my will down to my feet and said, "Come on, you know what you're doing." And they finally caught up, and that's when the audience went, "Wow."
Julianne
So
Hough
this
looks
guy
over
actually knows how to
and
do
dance.
something.
Did they come
That's
out?
fun.
Did they find out that you're a professional dancer?
Oh, I don't think we had any time to chat or
that's
anything,
it,
because
yeah.
it was just the middle of the show, and as soon as I got done doing my thing, they had another guy do his thing, and then they threw us into the back to do some go-go moves with the gals in the lighted squares there, which was really fun. Yeah.
Talk about then the course you're going to be offering. So if people sign up for this, it's just a one-day course?
It's a 3-hour workshop on Saturday, April 27th. and they can find out about it at our danceforevents.com website, on the dance services page, or on our Facebook page for Dance the Number 4 Events, and they can find the link there to sign up. And it's for couples. We would love to see them there.
Okay, and this will help them not only with dancing, but more about life.
It's a combination. It's something we're doing a breakthrough about, with connecting both on and off the dance floor. They will definitely learn some dance moves. We're going to be working on the swing. It's a lot of fun, because the key is to have fun with your partner as well as connecting with them.
Now, where will that be held?
That'll be in Fairview. We have a ballroom there, and it's in the woods. It's a beautiful area, so it's a great opportunity to disconnect from your mobile devices and reconnect with your partner.
Talk about, in closing, ballroom dancing. People have, I guess, misconceptions about it. What are some of the misconceptions?
Well, there are many misconceptions. I would say one of the biggest ones is that it's going to be difficult. It's going to be time-consuming. It's going to perhaps even be embarrassing or intimidating when you see yourself pitted up against other people who are doing a lot of steps. So I just try to let people know that everybody started somewhere, and you're in that place, and you can do that one step really, really well. And people who've gotten 4 or 5 steps down that didn't realize they have to really make a good go of it will start looking at you and saying, they really dance well, you know. They won't be thinking, they don't know many steps. They'll be thinking, I need to learn how to dance better.
And I think that's a great point you're making, that if somebody's listening and they're thinking about taking dance lessons or trying it out, don't get hung up on having to be on Dance with the Stars next week.
No.
But just start slow.
Exactly.
And that's a great
And especially for
advice.
guys, because guys are often intimidated to take dance lessons. So I tell them, I am one of the people that you will love to work with, because I've spent my whole life working with men and helping them get over that hump, that little intimidation factor, and give them all the tools that they need as a guy to get started. And it's often quite reassuring to the guys, because they do come in feeling a little bit intimidated about the process.
And we've had guys, worked with 2 gentlemen that have had strokes, actually, and they've come in to use dancing as the rehabilitation. It sharpens the mind and their mind-body connection. And one gentleman said, he said that it was better for him than his physical therapy. So
I can just see it. What a great thought.
Yeah.
Final question, Kimberly. Do you see it in terms of people being apprehensive about dance? More guys as opposed to women? Women seem to be more receptive to it?
generally the guys, it's because it's a pride thing and an ego thing, I think, getting up there, because no one wants to be embarrassed. And that's where I really give kudos to Ted, because we work, well, when we do the big band swing weekend at the Grove Park, we could have like 50 couples in there, people that have never been on the dance floor before, and they come away with it, and they're like, you've actually given me the confidence with the tools you teach to be able to lead my partner for the first time. And these could be couples that have danced the first time, or they've been dancing for a long time, and they always get something out of it.
And that's the kind of feedback that really brings a big smile to my face and makes me feel like, well, we're really doing something good for this community.
Yeah.
If folks want to get more information about either the upcoming workshop
Mm-hmm.
or some of the other training and teaching you do, best bet is the website?
The website, dance4events.com. We will be doing a new website, but right now it's danceforevents.com, and go to the dance services for that link on the Dance for Connection workshop.
Okay, and I can guarantee you, having worked with Ted and Kimberly, that if you work with them, you will have a good time.
Thank you, Blaine.
Thanks, guys.
It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you, Blaine.
Okay, appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
And as Ted and Kimberly work their way out of the studio, let me just make a couple of general announcements. First of all, I'd like to mention that the underwriter support for WPVM is made possible by Blaine's World, a blog that contains information about Asheville's theater scene, reviews, tidbits of information that you'll find useful, and some jokes that are hopefully not too risque. If you'd like to be added to the mailing list of this missive, just send an email to bginbc@aol.com and put subscription in the subject line. I'd also like to recognize 2 upcoming shows in the area. One is a free concert that will be held this coming Friday, April 19th at 7:30 p.m. at the Attic Salt Theater. And it's Letters from Home, Reviving Patriotism. And it's a very exciting show that will feature Aaron Dirth and Dan Beckman, along with local performer Heather Nicole Bronson. And for information about that, all you have to do is write for tickets to WPVMFM@AOL.com. Put your name and the number of tickets you want. It's going to be a fun show. In addition, there'll be a free marketing seminar put on by Asheville Score, and that'll be marketing for the 21st century. That'll be Saturday, April 27th at 9 a.m. And I think you'll have fun with that, learn a lot. Just so happens that yours truly is teaching it. And for information about that seminar and all the SCORE seminars, go to ashevillescore.org. It's next my pleasure to introduce my second guest of the Plains Horror Show today, and she is Dee Etta. And welcome aboard, Dee.
Thank you so much, Blaine. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's my pleasure to have you. And Dee Etta is an actress and performer, and I've had the pleasure of seeing her once. Hopefully it won't be the last time I see you. But she's a professional expert, made her Broadway debut in The Most Happy Fella, starring Giorgio Tazzi, and an original cast member of the 1982 winner of the Best Musical on Broadway, 9.
Correct.
One of my favorites.
Yes.
Karen Akers.
Karen Akers.
In it?
Karen Akers was one of the stars, and Raul Julia was the Guido, the main character.
Wow.
And Liliane Montevecchi played the producer, and she won Best Featured Actress in a Musical. We won, I think, 11 Tonys.
How long were you in that show?
I was in it from its conception. I was in the workshop, so I created the role that I played, which was one of the 4 Germans. And I was known as the German in the turban, Olga von Sturm. And you can see us on YouTube because we performed at the Tony that year. And so if you see that we did one of the numbers that Kathy Moss played Sarah Gina called Be Italian. And so we are all in that. And you'll see me, I get bits on camera, but I'm in the German. I wear a turban in the show, so I was the German in the turban.
Love that show. Wow. She also appeared with Angela Lansbury, Judge Hearn in the Broadway National Tour, and on PBS and Sweeney Todd, directed by Hal Prince, as well as Broadway National Tour of Showboat with Lenny Kazan, and 8 years as an Iowa housewife and Earth Mother in Menopause, the musical.
Correct.
Wow, you've done a couple things in
I've done a few things, and in between.
Well, the question I always ask
Yes.
performers is that when you were a little girl, where'd you grow up, by the way?
Well, I was born in Maine. My parents, my mother was a professional dancer for 40 years, and she performed with all the big stars, Dean Martin, Martha Raye, the big bands, and my father was in the Air Force. But they were both from Maine, and they happened to meet because my mother owned her own dance studio as a 16-year-old. But then she was coming to, she wanted to be more free, and so she went on tour, and she got hired to be a rhythm rocket, which was an offshoot of the Rockettes. And she wasn't tall enough. She always wanted to be a rockette, but she wasn't tall enough. So they formed a group of girls that they did the same routines as the Rockettes. And it was one of these, she was in Washington, D.C., and all the big theaters around the country. And so they waited 10 years before they had me. They decided to have a family. And my father, when they got married during the war, they both went their separate ways, and then they decided to have a family. So I was lucky I was here, I said.
And so you knew, though, shortly after you were born, you were going to be a performer?
Well, it's funny. My mother said, all her musicality is in her feet because she does not sing. My father had a voice, but he didn't pursue it. He loved show business, and he loved acting. And my mother said that she knew I had something because in the high chair I was singing before I could talk. I can remember a radio being there, and the big song of the day was "How Much Is That Doggy in the Window?" And I would sing and sing for no reason. So she knew there was something there, and off we went.
So you started singing as a young kid. you remember your first performance?
Oh, well, I believe my first performance in school was I think I was in middle school, and one of our teachers wrote a musical about Madeline, which you can read about her, a little girl in a little girls' school. And I played Miss Clavel, which was the head of the girls' school, and Madeline was her favorite. And I still remember I had a solo, and I sang the song. I still remember the song I sang. And it was quite a big deal because this teacher wrote it. And it was a cute little show with all the little girls marching in a row. And Madeline, she gets sick, but we all went to see her. And it was a great little show.
Well, I won't put you on the spot to ask you to sing it now, but wouldn't that be so cool? I always thought about that when I speak to performers.
Sure.
To do their first number, like
Yeah,
a variety
yes,
show.
yes.
Everybody
Do the first thing they ever did.
at 5 and 6 years of old or something.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Bring back old memories.
It sure would.
Or something. So you saw that as a young kid, you're performing, I just love the story, and you then kept performing through school?
Yes, I when I was in 8th grade, I got into, seventh grade, I got into a production of The Crucible we were doing. And the 8th graders were mad because they gave this role of Abigail to a younger student, which was me.
And this was not Crucible the musical.
No, this is Crucible the play.
Right.
And so, yes, I was always in chorus and the drama club and all through high school. And I got involved with our community theater, which I'm a big fan. Everyone starts somewhere. And so in my hometown of Falmouth, Massachusetts, I grew up on the Cape. My father got stationed there. And I landed the role of Nancy and Oliver when I was 16 years old. And that was my big taste of showbiz. And I always liked to perform, but that's when I decided, no, I think I will like to pursue to be a singer and perform. I'd always performed, but never thought of it as a career. I always wanted to be a second grade school teacher.
So what? You were about 16, you decided you wanted to be
Yes, about around 16, yeah. So when I really decided I wanted to do that as a career. And when I started studying voice with a teacher in town, and she was very good, and one of her students was going to the University of Hartford, the Hart College of Music. And so I was preparing, and I found out from her that this school would let you as a freshman perform in all kinds of things while you were there, as opposed to a conservatory or another schools that do not let you perform until you do your senior recital. So I thought that was great because I wanted to continue performing. So I decided when the time came I was going to apply to the University of Hartford, Hart College of Music, and that was the only school that I was going to try to get into. And my parents were like, you gotta try to go for other schools. I said, no, if I don't get into this school, I'm not going to go. So they allowed me to do that, and I auditioned, and I had done a classical piece, and they immediately accepted me into the opera department. I didn't know opera from a hole in the wall, but okay, I'll go ahead and do it. And so off I went to school, and I was an opera major and did that for 5 years, and subsequently every year did a lead in their big operas, which was with full orchestra, fabulous productions. My first role was Musetta and La Bohème.
Little small role.
Yeah, little small role. Musetta and La Bohème. Then I did Anne Truelove in The Rake's Progress, which was I loved doing that show. I was also in the touring operas that they had of Abduction from the Seraglio, Constanza, and The Jumping Frog of Calaveras County by Lucas Foss, and we would take these to schools. They do little 90-minute versions of them. And I did Carmen at school, and they contacted me a while ago, and they are going to digitalize these performances that I had done and send me a copy of the CDs which I'm thrilled because I'd love to hear them again. Oh, I also did Orpheus in the Underworld, the lead of Eurydice. And so there are about 5 operas that I will get CDs of.
Opera singers amaze me, though, in terms of the fact that not only you have to memorize the music, but oftentimes in a foreign language.
Oh,
You know?
yes.
Are you good in foreign languages?
Well, yes, I was. Now, fortunately, in school, we did them all in English, even Carmen. But I did have to study French, Italian, and German languages, and we had diction classes where you had to sing numbers in those languages. And of course, my senior recital, you were required to do an English section, a German, French section, an Italian section. So you got graded on your ability to do those.
Well, then you shifted gears at some point in time. Being an opera singer, you got more into pop type stuff.
I always did musical theater. And luckily, in college, they had a musical theater class. So I took that class along with my opera. And we would have little recitals singing this is a funny story, singing songs from musical theater. And my teacher in school was the head of the voice department. I'll never forget her, Helen Hubbard. She was a wonderful lady. And she liked me, and she guided me and let me sing and taught me so many things about technique and breathing. Well, we're having this big musical theater thing, and my song I'm singing is Tits and Ass from a chorus line. And she thought it was hilarious. And I have the ability to sound like an opera singer or sound like a musical theater singer. I have different voices, I call it. It's the way you produce the sound. And boy, some of the other voice teachers were up in arms that I was singing this song. How could she allow me to do that? And
this classically trained opera singer.
Yes. And the other voice teachers, they were all like, can't believe that here I am, who's starring in the opera for them, is now singing this body number, Tits and Ass, which was very popular back then. So that was a little scandalous thing, I guess, in school. But I got to do a lot of different things all through my 4 years there. One of them was the instrumentalists would need a vocalist for their senior recital. They had to do a piece with a singer. So I did a piece for an oboe player. It was for voice and oboe. I also did an organ major wanted to do Renaissance songs with organ and asked me if I would be the singer for him. And I said, sure. So I was busy in all fields and got to know a lot of the instrumentalists that were majoring in their field. And one gentleman was a percussionist. And I don't know if you've ever heard of John Cage, but
Sure.
He's a very famous composer. So he wanted to do a whole recital of John Cage and asked me and another gentleman to do a piece called The Wonderful Widow of 18 Springs. And this is a piece with closed grand piano. It's all closed up. And a voice. And it was all written out, so it was crazy. And you would... I can do it would be sounded like this. I'd go, night by silent sailing night. And he would go, he would hit underneath the piano on the side of the piano. It was all rhythm. It was all percussion. And my little song was was a poem. So that was fascinating to do, plus hearing the other John Cage numbers. So I loved it so much. I was in my element, I felt.
Well, one of the things I think you're pointing out, hopefully to listeners, especially if they're into theater, is that the broader range of skills you have and abilities and things you do, the better off you're going to be in the long run.
Correct, yes. And, my strength, of course, is singing. And my mother being a professional dancer, I was in dance all my life. She would take me into her baby class, and I was really the baby because I was the youngest. So I consider myself a singer who moves well. I'm not like my mother, but I've always been able to pick up choreography and do it, but I would never say I'm a dancer's dancer at all. And it is I feel all the music influences you. Getting the classical training really helps in the other areas of singing, whether it be pop or Barbra Streisand style songs, even any kind of music and musical theater and opera. So I did some off-Broadway things, and as a matter of fact, that's how I got my equity card, was doing a children's show off-Broadway.
What about straight acting?
Straight acting, I didn't do a lot of it, but my husband really liked, he's a wonderful actor and singer, but he's also a director. And we all have owned 3 theaters, having known ourselves, plus a school. And so I started doing some acting. I was in Barefoot in the Park. I played the mother in that. And I don't look to do straight acting necessarily, because most of the things they want me to sing, the roles I've done, you have to act in them anyway. And done Annie.
Yeah, I had fun with watching you. I think for the first time I saw you in a very serious dramatic role in a murder mystery theater.
Yes.
And that was a little over the top, but I thought that was fun to watch you.
It was fun. My husband wrote My Big Fat Italian Wedding Murder Mystery, and I played Carmela Pasquale, the mother of the bride. And I, of course, people know me. I have short blonde hair, and I was all in a black wig and looked very, very Italian, lots of jewelry. And that had dialogue, but it also had some improv in it. And though they are so much fun to do.
It looked like you had fun.
Yeah,
with
we
it.
did.
When I saw you, I had to take a double take. I said,
Yeah.
who is this woman?
Who is it?
Anyway, so back to your performing career. So you've certainly done a lot of different things in your
I have.
in your career. You mentioned before 9. Also, I've seen, I don't know if you were the one I saw in the show, but Menopause the Musical.
Yes.
You were in it for a few years?
I was in it for 8 years.
8 years. Now, was that straight?
That was, what do you mean straight?
Did you do were you every year you performed?
Oh, yes. I was touring around the country with it.
Were you at the touring version that came to Asheville?
No.
Oh, too bad.
No, I wasn't in that. But we were in Florida, and we had a dinner theater, and we were planning on moving on and doing something else, and we got a call that they needed a replacement. We knew the musical director at the time, and he said they need someone in Denver immediately to go in. There's only 4 characters in that show, and the one they wanted me for was the Iowa housewife. So I said yes, and we packed up and moved to Denver, because it was about a 2-year contract in Denver. And I was trained in about 3 days to go into this show. I love that show. It is one of the funniest, inspiring shows. And I did the Iowa housewife for quite a while, and then they needed to replace in that same cast the Earth Mother. So they said, we want you to learn the Earth Mother too. So I ended up switching over to be this Earth Mother, and loved her character also. So for 8 years I was in Reno, I was in Minneapolis, I was in New Haven, Connecticut. I mean, and we would have sit downs where we were there for weeks on end.
From Iowa to, let's talk about Florida. You've been in Hendersonville. How did you get to Hendersonville, North Carolina?
Well, having done Menopause the Musical, we knew the founder of the Center of Arts and Inspiration, which was Jeannie Linders. She wrote the show, and she called Jimmy up to see, if we could come down here to get this play started. And had a terrific opening, and they're on their way.
And so you're going to stay, hopefully, in the Hendersonville?
Yes, we're going to stay.
Area.
And we'll be back and forth, because Jimmy has a lot of other projects that he's going to be doing. He's up for a movie in L.A., which is in the works. He also has some projects in New York and in Florida. So we have a place in Florida and now here, and we love it here. So we'll be coming back and forth when we can and do different projects.
And so I guess that's kind of one of the exciting things about being a performer, but you have to be willing to do that, is that you're always doing something different there.
Yes, and the flexibility. We have been separated. Well, Jimmy and I have been married for 31 years, and during that time we have been separated at times, but we try to work together. And we own these theaters, and we work together in the theaters that we owned. We had a school at one point where we taught acting and voice, and I still teach voice when I'm in a place where I can, and so. Things have been very exciting and never dull. So we're used to moving around and we work together very well. People ask us, how can you be together so much? But, we understand the business and we understand what we need to do. And I love being directed by him. And my biggest thrill was we had never done a show together.
I was just going to ask you that, yeah.
As a husband and wife. But in 2012, we did the last national tour of A Fiddler on the Roof, and Jimmy played Tevye, and I played his wife Golda. So I said I got to yell at him a lot in that show, which was wonderful. It was a great production, and Jimmy's career was always with Fiddler on the Roof. If people listen to his interview that he had with you, and he'd done it several times, so it's like second nature. I mean, you could call him up today and say, we need a replacement for Tevye. He could go right in and do it. And he has several roles like that he's able to do. He remembers them. I don't. They go out of my head, and I go on to something new.
I could see you two doing I Do.
Yes.
I'd love to see you in
something like that.
Yeah.
And we perform together in concerts. We had an act that we did, and just recently we went back to Florida to sing with the Newport Richey Community Orchestra, I believe it's called. And we've done it this is our third year as a fundraiser for the orchestra. They're all volunteers, 50-piece orchestra. And this year we did an Italian night. So Jimmy did all of his Neapolitan songs that he's known since he's a little boy. And I did some Connie Francis numbers, and then we sang some things together. And it was great. It was just great.
Well, I also had the pleasure recently of listening to that CD you had done
Oh, yes.
together. And it was funny, I told Jimmy that there used to be something called CDs, and
Yes.
so I could listen in my car, but there are no CD players in cars
That's
anymore.
right.
So it took me a while. I had to take up a CD player, but it was a great, where you're singing Broadway tunes.
All
and
Broadway tunes.
I really enjoyed that. That was
Great, thank you.
I could see you doing a concert on that as well.
Yes.
Talk about the fact that you said you do teach singing still, and you work with a lot of performers as kind of a mentor, coach, guide. If anybody's listening and they want to get into theater, aside from telling them to get their head examined, perhaps,
Well,
what else would you recommend?
Well, I feel that education is very important. So if you can go to a college or conservatory that is theater-based or music-based, I think it's very important to get that foundation and background. And when you get out, you still need to study. When I moved to New York City, I had a vocal coach, I had a singing coach, I took acting lessons, and all along auditioning for many different things. But it's just like anything else, to keep you in good shape, like an athlete, because your body is your instrument. I try to tell my students, and you need to know how to do that. And it could be, for anybody, a dancer, a singer, a gymnast, whatever, and how to present yourself properly. And coaching, presentation, I used to give a class on how to audition so that you show them your best side, your best vocal technique, whatever it is, and to feel confident in that. So I think it gives a lot of, I worked with children, small children, Actually, our Jimmy and I, our goddaughter Sarah Del Bido, who was in The Murder Mystery as the bride, and we've had her since she was 9 years old, and she's been in shows with us when we had our first theater in Florida as a 9-year-old. I have pictures of me singing and she looking up at me in a Christmas show. You know, we have a lot of memories. So we have a lot of students that we had as children that have grown up and have and continued in the business after they were adults.
What do you tell somebody who goes through the audition process and gets frustrated that they don't get chosen? You know? So, I mean, I feel bad. So many friends don't get every part, go for
Correct.
it, and they're amazed that they don't get every part. How do you tell people to deal with that?
You know, in the show business, you are not in control of your destiny. It's always somebody else. So if you go in to your audition, you know your music, you know your monologue, you are well prepared, you could do it when you're sick, when you're whatever, then you know you've done your best. And it could be your color hair, your height. You don't know what they're looking for half the time. But I auditioned for everything I could. And I didn't get selected for everything. I was, you know, if you don't like rejection, do not go into show business. That's my main thing. But I had 2 songs that I used my entire career in New York that got me work.
Tits and asses?
No, it wasn't
No.
that one. But I would go in and they'd see my resume with the opera and the stuff. And they'd say to me, I'd always do my belt number first, which was Coronet Man, an up version of Coronet Man from Funny Girl, kind of a jazzy version. And even though they would cut people off, I always got to sing the entire song.
Good sign.
So then they'd look at me with their glasses tilted down and say, now sing something legit. Okay, so I'd pull out, and at that time, because I had done Most Happy Fella, I did Somebody Somewhere from that show, which is a very soprano song. So,
Dee, anyway, I'd like to thank you for being my guest the second
Oh,
half
thank
hour
you.
on the Blaine's World Show. Anybody who wants to get in touch with you, best bet they can find you on Facebook.
find me on Facebook. I mean, feel free to contact me, tell me you heard me on the show, and if you have any questions I can answer for you, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, I'd like to thank you for being my guest the second half hour on the show. Ted and Kimberly Ross for being my guest the first half hour. Also, Zuzu Welsh, who provided the music you heard at the beginning of the show. You'll now be hearing at the end of the show. And lastly, to Amy Prisnash, my producer. Hope to see you next Wednesday here on the new WPVM LP in Asheville.
Listening to the new WPVM LP in Asheville, North Carolina. 103.7 on your dial and globally at WPVMFM.org.